Hello, and welcome back to Grave Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales whispered straight from the grave, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1, I served as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church. I'm not trying to start a debate about religion, and I'm not asking anyone to agree with my beliefs. I'm sharing this because it happened to me on my mission and is one of those experiences that never really leaves you, even years later. Missions come with a lot of jargon, so I'll explain terms as they come up. If anything is confusing, ask and I'll clarify. I served in the Durban, South Africa mission. I was near the end of my 2 years when I got transferred to Bloemfontein in the Free State province. I was almost certain it would be my last area. The way it worked, transfers happen every 6 weeks. That 6-week period is called a transfer, and at transfer time, missionaries get moved around. Some stay, some go, some keep the same companion, some don't. It's normal to spend multiple transfers in one area. This transfer was unusual because I was whitewashing the area with a newer missionary. Whitewashing means both missionaries assigned to the area are new to it, so there's no one there to show you the ropes. No one already serving who knows where members live, who's being taught, what the local routines are, or what problems exist. It happens sometimes, but it's not the most common thing. I'd been told the reason we were whitewashing was because the previous companions hadn't gotten along and leadership wanted the area to have a clean reset. My new companion was Elder Hansen. We met at a church in the town of Bethlehem, which is about 2.5 hours from Bloemfontein by road. I remember him clearly. He was tall and very skinny. He wore thick glasses. His brown hair was messy in a way that looked like it had never met a comb. He had that fresh missionary look, like he was still adjusting to being in the field, still not quite settled into the rhythm. I introduced myself and asked him a normal missionary question. "How long have you been out?" "This is my 4th transfer," he said. "So I'm still pretty new." "Enjoy it," I told him. "Before you know it, you'll be nearly done like me." We rode to Bloemfontein in a mission van. The drive was long enough that we did the usual icebreaker routine. Questions you ask because silence with a stranger feels awkward, and because you're going to be living on top of each other 24 hours a day. "How many siblings do you have? You got a girlfriend back home? How was your first area? Who were your previous companions? What did you do for fun before the mission?" We didn't find much in common, but that wasn't unusual. I'd served with companions who were completely different from me, and we still managed. You learn how to work with people you wouldn't normally choose. That's part of the mission. We got to Bloemfontein around 6, which meant the sun was already heading down. South Africa is a beautiful country, and I loved my time there, but it can be dangerous, especially after dark, depending on where you are. I preferred to be inside before the sun went down whenever possible. So that first evening, we didn't do much proselyting. We went through old records. We called the ward mission leader to get leads. For anyone unfamiliar, a ward is a congregation, usually around 100 to 300 people, depending on the area. The ward mission leader is a local member who helps coordinate missionary work, appointments, referrals, that kind of thing. We learned that the previous missionaries had been teaching an Afrikaans couple in a nearby neighborhood, and the couple had been fairly promising. So we called them, introduced ourselves, and set an appointment for the next morning. That appointment never happened. The next day, we went through our morning routine, and our first argument started early, during companionship study. That's the time missionaries are supposed to study together, plan together, and align on goals for the day. Elder Hansen didn't want to do it. He acted like it was pointless. I tried to push back gently, but it was clear he wasn't going to budge, and I didn't want to start the area by turning everything into a fight. So I let it go. It didn't feel like a big argument to me, but I noticed something that stuck with me. His face went red with anger, and his eyes had this intensity that didn't match the situation. It wasn't normal frustration. It was too hot, too personal, like he was offended by the idea of compromise. We rode our bikes to the Afrikaans couple's house. When we got there was a note on their gate. "Hey guys, sorry we have to cancel. We have a family emergency in Kimberley, and we won't be back until next week." I texted them that we hoped everything was okay and that they could call if they needed anything. Then I told Elder Hansen we'd call them again next week. That's when the next argument started. We disagreed about what to do now that our appointment was canceled. There's a stereotype that missionaries just knock doors all day. Sometimes we did, but it was never my favorite approach. In my experience, it could be unproductive, and it could put you in bad situations. I suggested we visit members first. Strengthen relationships, ask for referrals, let people know who we were. Elder Hansen insisted we should go tracting, door to door. I said we could do a few streets and then shift to something else. He wanted to do it for hours. He got louder. He started acting like I was refusing to work at all, and we were standing outside in the open. I didn't want a public scene, so I gave in. We tracked it, and it went about as well as tracting usually goes. Doors closed. People weren't interested. A few weren't polite about it. We never visited the members I'd wanted to see. That set the tone for the weeks that followed. Elder Hansen and I argued constantly. It wasn't one big blow-up. It was daily friction. Little things, planning, schedules, who we should visit, what time we should do what, how to use our time. Everything I suggested he shot down. Every decision became a tug of war. After a while, it started to feel like he enjoyed arguing, like conflict fed him, like he wanted to win more than he wanted to do missionary work. And the anger in him was strange. It was petty, but also sharp. It didn't fade quickly. It would flare over things that didn't matter, and then it would linger, simmering. One morning, we were out knocking doors again, and we got into one of our worst arguments. We had an appointment with a man we were teaching, an investigator, and he actually seemed promising. Someone who listened, someone who asked real questions, someone who felt like a person, not just a number in a mission report. We needed to go. Elder Hansen refused. He wanted to keep tracting. He acted like the appointment wasn't important, like we could reschedule whenever. like it didn't matter if we were reliable. For once, I didn't give in. I stood my ground. It sounds ridiculous because the argument wasn't about something dramatic, but the intensity of it was. Elder Hanson's face turned a deeper red than I'd ever seen. His jaw tightened, his fist balled up like he might hit me. I remember that detail clearly because it snapped something cold into my spine. Missionaries argue. They get frustrated. But that posture, like he was holding back a punch, wasn't normal. I said, "Forget it. We can go back to the apartment. There's no point teaching anyone if we can't even get along." "Fine," he snapped. "We can do what you want. We always do what you want." It was childish, and it wasn't true, and I rolled my eyes because I was exhausted. We got on our bikes and headed back. He rode far ahead of me. We were supposed to stay within sight and sound of each other for safety. That day, I didn't care. I didn't want him near me. I wanted space. I wanted quiet. I wanted anything but his anger. When I got back to the apartment building, he was already upstairs at the door. He had to wait for me because I had the key. At the time, I remember thinking it was almost funny. Watching him stand there, forced to wait. Watching him boil with impatience. I walked slowly up the stairs. I didn't rush. It felt like the only power I had in that moment. Now I wish I'd never opened that door. Maybe if I'd stayed outside and made him talk, maybe if I'd refused to go in until he calmed down, maybe something would have changed. I don't know. I only know how it ended. And it's hard not to torture yourself with all the possible versions of what could have happened instead. The moment I unlocked the door, he shoved it open aggressively and stormed into the bathroom. He slammed the bathroom door so hard it shook the wall. I sat on the couch and tried to calm down. I put my head in my hands and breathed until the anger drained out of me. I told myself we were both tired, both stressed, both human. We could reset. After a while, I got up and knocked on the bathroom door. "Elder," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to say I'm sorry. Sypha wouldn't have a problem rescheduling. If you want to knock doors, we can knock doors. Let's just get back out there." His voice came through the door. "Go away. I hate you." It wasn't shouted. It wasn't emotional. It was flat, like a line read from a script. I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said. "Have it your way. I'll be out here whenever you're ready to come out." As I turned away, I noticed his shadow under the door. It was moving, pacing back and forth. I shrugged it off. People pace when they're upset. It wasn't strange by itself. I went and sat down with a book. Lunch came around, and I decided to try again. A peace offering. I made an extra sandwich and even cut the crusts off the way he liked it. I knocked again. "Elder Hanson," I said, "I made you lunch. Come out and eat." "Go away, I hate you." Same tone, same flatness. Something in me prickled. His anger earlier had been so intense it looked like it could explode. This voice didn't match that. It sounded drained and empty, like the person speaking wasn't tired or furious, just hollow. I tried to ignore that thought. I told myself he was sulking. I left him alone. Hours passed, and he kept pacing. That's the part that started to get to me. The shadow moved back and forth, in a steady rhythm. It didn't speed up. It didn't slow down. It didn't stop. It was like a metronome made of darkness. Every time I looked toward the door, it was still going. I don't know how he didn't get tired. I don't know how he kept it up for so long. The pacing became a sound in my head even when I wasn't watching. My body started reacting to it the way you react to an irritant you can't scratch. A shiver down my spine, a tightness in my stomach. Dinner came, and I tried one last time to make peace. I made bunny chow, a local South African dish, curry poured into a hollowed-out loaf of bread. It was one of Elder Hanson's favorite foods since he'd arrived in the country. I thought maybe something familiar would coax him out. I knocked. "Elder Hanson, it's time to come out now. I made you bunny chow. Get it while it's hot." "Go away. I hate you." "You're being ridiculous," I said, frustration taking over. "Come eat or go hungry." "Go away. I hate you." "Fine," I snapped. "Have it your way. Sleep in there for all I care." I ate alone, fuming, trying not to listen to that steady shadow pacing beneath the door. Not long after, a new problem hit. I needed the bathroom badly. I hadn't used it all day because he'd been in there, and now I was beyond uncomfortable. I couldn't wait. I knocked again harder. "Dude," I said, "I need you to come out. I'm about to piss myself. You've been in there all day. Go away. I hate you. Stop acting like a baby. You can go right back in after I use it. I just need to go. Go away. I hate you." That's when I lost it. I pounded on the door and tried to force it open. It was locked and wouldn't budge. Then his voice came again, and this time it sounded different. Calmer, but also stronger, more forceful. Like whatever was speaking had more control than the angry kid I'd argued with all morning. Go away. I hate you." The shadow under the door stopped moving. That sudden stillness scared me more than the pacing. Something felt wrong in a way I can't fully describe. Not just, "This is annoying." Not just, "My companion is acting weird." More like the air shifted and my body recognized danger before my mind had words for it. I stepped back. "I'm going to use the neighbor's bathroom," I said, trying to sound normal. "I hope you clog the toilet." It wasn't technically allowed for us to just go into a neighbor's house like that without purpose, but at that point I didn't care. I knocked on the neighbor's door. A sweet, older Sotho woman answered. I explained we were having problems with our toilet and asked if I could use hers. She let me in without hesitation. That moment, being in a normal apartment with a normal person, hearing normal sounds, was the last normal thing I felt that night. When I returned to my apartment, the bathroom was still occupied. The shadow resumed pacing as if nothing had happened. I didn't want to provoke him, so I tiptoed past the door and went to the bedroom. I turned off the lights and got into bed. The only light left came from under the bathroom door. I could not fall asleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like something was watching me. I heard whispering from the bathroom, quiet voices that didn't sound like one person. I told myself it was pipes. I told myself it was my imagination. But the sounds kept threading together in a way that felt like language. Eventually, I slipped into a kind of sleep, and I saw Elder Hanson. His eyes burned with rage, deeper than anything I'd seen in him during the day. Behind him was a shadow, impossibly tall. Its hands, long, spindly, rested on his shoulders like it owned him. He walked toward me. I tried to back away, but I hit a wall. He reached for me, and suddenly his hands were on my throat. I fought him. I kicked. I thrashed. But his grip didn't shift. It was iron. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or awake. My eyes were jammed shut, but I could feel everything. I kept struggling until the edges of my awareness started to fade. Then I forced my eyes open. I was on the floor, gasping, air tearing into my lungs. My throat burned like I'd actually been choked. For a moment, I saw a shadow in the room. Then it was gone. The only light was still the glow under the bathroom door, and the shadow under that door was still pacing. I knew with absolute certainty that I had to leave. I didn't care about rules. I didn't care about appearances. I didn't care about anything except getting out of that apartment. I grabbed the mission cell phone and called my mission president. I kept ringing until he answered. His voice was thick with sleep. "Elder, is something wrong?" "I think so," I said. My voice shook. "There's something wrong with Elder Hansen. He locked himself in the bathroom all day. No matter what I do, he won't come out. Are you in any danger?" "I think there's something else here," I said. It attacked me while I was sleeping. There was a pause. Then my mission president said, clear and firm, "Leave. Right now. Go stay with a member. I will take care of it." I didn't hesitate. I sprinted out of the bedroom, past the bathroom, and out the front door. I ran down the street to a member's home. They were confused when I showed up in the middle of the night, but they let me in. I couldn't explain it. I barely understood it myself. Later, I managed to speak with one of the mission president's assistants. Assistants are missionaries, too, usually younger guys given extra responsibility. He was someone I knew from my group when I first arrived in the country. He didn't want to talk about it, but I pushed until he told me what happened. He said we came early, before the sun came up. The apartment was totally silent, but it felt wrong in there. Heavy, you know? President knocked on the bathroom door. No answer. The key was on the inside, so we had to break it down. His voice got quieter as he went on. When we got in, Elder Hansen was dead, in the bathtub. It looked like he'd slit his wrists. None of us had ever seen anything like it. President looked like he was about to fall apart. We called an ambulance, but he was gone. The coroner said he'd been dead since the previous morning. Since the previous morning. Not sometime during the night. Not after I left. Not during the hours when I was begging him to come out. He'd been dead while I was knocking on the door. Dead while I was making him lunch. Dead while the shadow paced back and forth. Dead while the voice answered me, flat and calm, over and over. "Go away. I hate you." I still don't know how to hold that in my mind without it breaking something. I ask myself the same questions you'd expect. Could I have prevented it? Should I have been kinder? Should I have reported his anger earlier so he could get help? Was it my fault? I don't have answers that give peace. I only have the memory. And sometimes, when I sleep, I'm back there. I see the light under the bathroom door. I see the shadow pacing. And I hear that voice, steady and empty, as if it's speaking from somewhere that isn't a room at all. Go away. I hate you. Story 2. It's so easy to fall in love with being a parent. People talk about the hard parts, sleep, money, the way your life gets smaller. But nobody warns you about how fast hope can flood you. How quickly it can become the center of everything. How easy it is to build a whole future in your head out of one test strip and a heartbeat on a screen. We conceived the night before my birthday. It was ordinary in the way anniversaries and birthdays are ordinary. We ate dinner, we laughed, we stayed up too late. We used protection. I remember that clearly. We were careful. We always were. Contraception was everywhere, like water, like something you didn't even have to think about anymore. 3 months later, 2 words changed everything. Positive, pregnant. It happened at dinner. We were halfway through pasta when the test sat on the counter. That blunt little stick quietly deciding our lives. Kaz looked at it once, then again, then his face drained so quickly it was like someone poured all the color out of him. He didn't say anything. He just stood up and went upstairs. Then I heard him vomiting. I ran after him and found him on his knees in front of the toilet, shaking, one hand gripping the seat like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. He choked up undigested pasta in ugly waves, and I rubbed his back and tried to make my voice sound calm. But we used protection, right? I whispered, stroking his clammy face. Kaz was pale, very pale. Pale in a way that didn't look like nausea alone. His head was pressed against the toilet lid, his eyes squeezed shut. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I knew we had used protection. We always did. There wasn't even room for doubt. But the test was still positive. Another test was positive, too. Then the doctor confirmed it with an ultrasound like he was stamping an official seal on reality. "You are pregnant," he said. The doctor leaned forward with a smile that looked practiced. He placed a hand on Kaz's stomach like this was the most normal thing in the world. Like he'd done it 1,000 times. Like this wasn't rare or complicated or dangerous. "Congratulations, Mr. Haverford," he said. His eyes flicked up to mine, then back down. "Remember, if you feel uncomfortable at any stage in the pregnancy, you may request immediate termination of the fetus." His expression tightened slightly, just around the edges. "Mr. Haverford," he continued, careful now, "due to your medical condition, I recommend—" "No." Kaz shook his head and smiled, but there was a knot between his brows like his body knew what his mouth was refusing. He reached for my hand and squeezed hard enough that my fingers hurt. "I want to keep it," he whispered. "We're going to be a family, right? The 3 of us." I nodded with tears in my eyes. I couldn't help it. I could feel the future swelling in my chest like a balloon. "Right," I said. After that, I went into a kind of fever. I spent the next week planning everything. The baby's room, the colors. What corner would fit a rocking chair? Which wall would hold shelves? Lists of names on my phone that I rearranged over and over, like if I got the order right, nothing could go wrong. We decided on gender-neutral names. Ren knew Quinn. I said them out loud while I cleaned, while I cooked, while I stood in the shower and let hot water pound the back of my neck. Ren, Quinn. They sounded like gentle people, safe people. We went to Home Depot like excited idiots. I was holding paintbrushes in one hand and a can of paint in the other, and I lifted Kaz off the ground for a second and spun him around. "Our own family," I laughed. People stared, irritated, like we were blocking the aisle with our happiness. I didn't care. Kaz didn't care either. He was already wandering toward the cribs, eyes bright. "I'm so excited," he said, and his voice cracked slightly, like he hated how much he meant it. We were standing there, me hugging him touching his stomach like it was something sacred, when a man nearby snapped at me. "Hey." I turned. "Watch it," he said, nodding toward Kaz's jacket. That's when I noticed the light blue streak on the fabric, a mark that signaled Kaz's pregnancy status, an automatic leave from work, a marker meant to protect him by letting other people know to keep distance. Kaz hated wearing it. He complained about it constantly, said it made him feel like a walking sign. He pouted now, like a child forced to wear something embarrassing. The man's face twisted. "Stupid bitch," he hissed, looking directly at me. "What do you think you're doing, hugging him like that? You're going to harm his baby." I felt anger spike up so fast I saw white for a second. I stepped forward, but Kaz cut in before I could speak. "Chill," he said, calm and sharp. He rubbed his belly with a small smile, like he was soothing the baby, like he was reassuring himself. "My wife's just excited, bro. Fuck off." The man muttered something under his breath and walked away. Kaz turned to me and wrapped his arms around me again, pressing his cheek to my hair like he wanted to hide in the comfort of it. "Where do you want to go?" he asked. "How about the park?" The sentence hit me like a slap, not because it was a bad idea, not because there was anything wrong with the park, but because the moment he said it, something cold slid down my spine, a visceral feeling like an invisible chain tightening around my neck. A memory surfaced so sharply it made my stomach twist. The park, the rope, the sky. I swallowed hard and forced my face to stay neutral. "No," I said too quickly, and I knew it the moment the word came out wrong. "No, we can just get takeout." I shoved him lightly, trying to turn it into a joke, trying to make my refusal look casual. "Or I'll get takeout," I said, laughing too loud, "and I'll make both of you a meal." Kaz studied me for a second, then his smile softened again, like he chose not to question it. He squeezed my hand. "If you insist," he said. We went home and started decorating, painting walls, moving furniture, folding tiny clothes we didn't even need yet. Kaz danced to the radio while I taped off corners, and for a little while, it felt normal. It felt like the universe had made a mistake, sure, but maybe it was a good mistake. Then Kaz's face changed. His cheeks flushed red. His mouth opened like he was about to say something. Then he bolted upstairs. Morning sickness, I thought automatically, even though it was still early for that, and even though I didn't know what morning sickness meant for him. Then he screamed. A full, terrified scream that snapped something inside me. I ran up the stairs so fast I nearly tripped. His wail slammed into me from behind the bathroom door. I pressed my hand to the wood, heart hammering like it wanted out. "Kaz?" I whispered. "Are you okay?" I rested my forehead against the door, listening to his sobs and the horrible wet sounds inside. We had talked about the possibility. We had. We knew his body wasn't built for this, not safely. But he insisted. He insisted so hard it felt like he was trying to rewrite biology with willpower. "Just tell me if you need me," I said. "I'm here, okay? I'm here." The words felt thick and foreign in my mouth. Then he spoke through sobs. "I don't know," he cried. I can't tell. Can you ring an ambulance?" His voice slid into a whine. I'm losing blood." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. I called anyway. I gave the address. I told them my husband was pregnant and bleeding, and I needed help now. While I waited, the park flashed in my mind again. That same memory, that same cold tightening in my throat. I forced it away. I focused on Kaz. I held him. I kept him talking so he didn't pass out. When the ambulance arrived, they moved fast. They loaded him onto a stretcher and carried him out. I climbed in behind them, breath coming too quick, too shallow. And then something happened that made my skin crawl. The paramedics stared at me the entire ride. Not quick glances, not curiosity. A steady, assessing look, like I was on trial. One of them leaned closer to Kaz, voice gentle. "Mr. Haverford," he said softly. I stiffened. "Did your wife," the paramedic continued, "at any point interfere with your pregnancy? That includes causing you stress, touching you, being overly present, or any form of physical contact." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The paramedic's expression stayed kind, almost sympathetic, and that made it worse. "You can tell us anything," he added, still speaking to Kaz. "We will believe you." Kaz was curled on the stretcher, turned away from me. His hands clutched his stomach. His voice came out broken. "Is the baby okay?" he asked. The paramedic didn't hesitate. "I'm afraid not," he said. "Mr. Haverford, you have miscarried." Kaz made a sound that didn't register as human to me. Something raw ripped out of him. The paramedic's voice stayed smooth. "Please understand, this is not your fault. At this stage, the loss appears to have been caused by your wife's actions." "No." I tried to stand, tried to reach, but my body felt like it was full of wet cement. "What are you talking about?" Kaz sat up, eyes wild, voice rising. "I have a medical condition," he said. "It causes..." "That's unfortunate." The paramedic cut him off calmly. "And I'm so sorry for your loss." The world tilted. Suddenly, I wasn't in the ambulance anymore. I was 15 again, standing in the park, looking up. My mother's stripy socks, her boots, the rope withered and tight around her neck. Women's bodies hanging like balloons from the sky, heads tilted wrong, faces rotten and skeletal. Reminders. I blinked hard and the ambulance came back into focus. But the memory didn't leave. It wrapped itself around the moment like a second layer of air. I was yanked to my feet. Hands grabbed my arms. The paramedic's words rang in my skull. "We cannot ignore this clear picture of fetal death caused by your wife's incompetence." My arms were wrenched behind my back. I screamed my husband's name, but my voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. Kaz was shouting too, thrashing, trying to sit up, trying to reach me, but they held him down. I was dragged away from him, down a hallway that didn't look like the hospital I knew, down a corridor that felt too long, too clean, too empty. In my mind, I could already feel the noose tightening. And then the phrase came, not from one mouth, but from many. "Hang the baby killer." The words hit like a verdict. And as my feet stumbled forward against my will as Kaz's screams faded behind me, I realized with a cold clarity that being a parent wasn't the horror. The horror was living in a world where someone else decides what you're guilty of, and where love, simple, human love, is treated like a weapon. Story 3. Someone new moved into my neighborhood 2 weeks ago, right across the street from me. I only spoke to him twice, and I doubt I'll ever see him again. The first time was the day he moved in. 3 moving trucks were lined up on his property, and he was hauling everything inside by himself, box after box, moving like he didn't get tired. I walked over because that's what you do when you live in a small cul-de-sac. You make the effort. You pretend you're all part of the same little community, even if you only wave at each other when you take out trash. "Do you need a hand?" I asked. He turned and glared at me like I'd insulted him. He had wispy gray hair that fell across his forehead, and underneath it, his eyes were an intense, manic blue. His nose was bent like it had been broken at least once. The scowl lasted just long enough for my stomach to tighten, and then he forced a grin into place like he remembered he was supposed to be friendly. "No thanks," he said, and grabbed another box from the back of the truck. I should have taken that and left. Instead, I tried again, because I didn't want the first interaction to end in a stare down. "I see you bought the Donovans' old place," I said. "They were nice people. Shame what happened to them." The second I said it, I wished I hadn't. Even I didn't like how it sounded. Too casual, too gossipy. But I'd grown up hearing my parents talk that way about neighbors, like tragedy was just another thing you mentioned with property taxes and weather. His hand slipped. The box fell and burst open on the pavement. Newspaper scraps spilled everywhere, scattering in the wind. I bent down automatically to help gather them. "No," he shouted. The word cracked like a whip. He lunged forward and started shoveling the papers back into the box with frantic hands, like the scraps were alive and trying to escape. He didn't let me touch a single piece. He kept his body between me and the open box, slamming the flaps down before I could get a real look at what was inside. All I saw was packing paper, or something that looked like packing paper. Then he grabbed the box and rushed into the house without a word. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood there on the street feeling stupid. I should have gone home. I should have minded my business. But curiosity is a real sickness, and I was already infected. I glanced toward the trucks again, then toward his door, then back to the trucks, and I peeked. There were dozens of boxes inside the trucks, all the same shape, stacked tightly together like bricks, the same size as the one he dropped, the same damp-looking cardboard. I looked over my shoulder to make sure he wasn't watching from a window. Then I lifted the flap of the nearest box. The cardboard felt soggy, not wet like rain, more like it had absorbed moisture over a long time. As soon as the flap opened, a smell hit me so hard I gagged. Rotting fruit. Not old apples in a bowl rot. This was deeper, thick, sweet, and sour at the same time. A smell that sits in your nose and refuses to leave. I got a glimpse inside before I let the flap drop. Apples. Yes, but not normal ones. Dark and collapsing, covered in something moving. Maggots. The surface looked alive. I stumbled backward and slammed the flap shut. At that exact moment, the front door across the street flew open, and the man ran out screaming. I didn't wait to hear what he yelled. I turned and hurried back to my house, heart pounding like I'd been caught stealing. I locked my door behind me and stood there in my entryway, breathing too fast, my hand still gripping my keys like a weapon. So much for first impressions. After a few minutes, guilt kicked in. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because I knew what I did was wrong. I had invaded his privacy. I had looked inside something that wasn't mine. If I wanted to pretend I was a decent neighbor, I couldn't ignore that. So I tried to calm myself down by doing what I always do when my mind won't settle. I sat by my front window and watched. Across the street, he kept moving boxes in with the intensity of someone doing holy work. His movements were quick and focused. No breaks, no phone calls, no talking. just carrying box after box like he was trying to empty the trucks before something could happen. I couldn't stop thinking about those apples. The smell, the color, the maggots. I told myself they probably went bad during the move. That was logical. Maybe he'd bought fruit and forgotten it in the garage. Maybe the box got hot in the truck. Maybe it wasn't even apples. Maybe it was compost or something, and I misread it in shock. And if they were rotten, of course he took the box inside. He would dispose of it later. Normal. That was the story I tried to feed myself. I watched for the rest of the day anyway, transfixed by the way he worked. By the time he finished, his driveway was piled with flattened cardboard. The recycling company was going to hate him. The next morning, I ran into my neighbor, Helene, while I was leaving for work. Helene lived in the house to my right. She was the kind of older lady who treats small talk like oxygen. She loved tea, gardening, and collecting little pieces of everyone's day the way some people collect stamps. She was out in her garden as usual, tending to it carefully. When she saw me, she lit up. "Oh, Dennis," she called. "Did you meet the new neighbors? What's their name? Did they seem nice?" I forced a smile. "No, I haven't really met him. I think it's just one new neighbor." Helene looked surprised. 3 moving trucks for one person. To each their own, I suppose. I started toward my car, but she kept talking. "I was thinking of going over with a bundle of flowers from my garden," she said, "as a welcome gift. Do you think he'd like that?" I didn't want to have this conversation. I wanted to get in my car and leave. But Helene's face was so hopeful, I couldn't bring myself to shut her down. "Yes," I said. "You should go over soon. The moving trucks are still there, so he's probably home." Helene smiled wider and turned back to her garden, already selecting flowers. I watched her hands move through the plants as I drove away, and something in my chest tightened. I didn't know why at the time. It felt like unease trying to turn itself into regret. When I got home that evening, I saw traffic in my cul-de-sac. That alone was strange. Our street was usually dead quiet. Kids didn't even ride bikes out there much. There was nowhere to go. It was just houses looping around a small circle. But now trucks were coming and going from the new neighbor's property, more than the day before. Dump trucks, flatbeds, vehicles that didn't belong on a residential street. They were dumping scrap metal into the yard behind his house. He had about 6 acres back there, the kind of yard that usually gets used for gardens or maybe a shed and some trees. Now it was becoming a dump. I pulled into my driveway and walked over to my neighbors, Tom and Fred. They were standing outside like they couldn't look away. "The hell is he doing?" Tom yelled. Tom has a loud personality. He's the kind of man who thinks volume equals authority. I've seen him yell at delivery drivers for parking too close to his mailbox. "You think it's some kind of business?" I asked, trying to rationalize. "Maybe he just needs to store it for a bit." Tom's face turned red. "I don't care what his reasoning is. He can't run dump trucks through this neighborhood all fucking night." He looked like he was about to storm across the street and start a war. But his wife called from their door that dinner was ready. Tom stomped inside, still furious, and Fred and I exchanged a look and smirked. We both knew Tom. If this continued, it would get ugly. I went back home. I sat by my window and watched until the last truck left. Then I tried to sleep. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm to the sound of metal grinding on asphalt and raised voices. I ran to my window and saw tow trucks. Not just a couple, a line of them, hauling junk cars. Rusted shells, wrecks, cars that looked like they'd been sitting in fields for decades. They were dumping them into the neighbor's yard. Tom was outside screaming at the drivers. His wife clung to his arm, trying to restrain him, but his voice carried anyway. "You can't bring a whole damn junkyard into this neighborhood," he shouted. "It's illegal. It's dumping. If you won't stop, I'm going to come over there and make you." The tow truck drivers didn't react, not even a glance. They moved like machines, eyes forward, focused on the task. Like Tom's yelling wasn't even part of the world. I got dressed fast and went outside. Tom turned to me, veins popping at his temple. "Can't we call the city?" I asked. "Already did," he snapped. "They hung up as soon as I explained. Called 4 times. That didn't sound right. Even a lazy city office doesn't hang up on complaints like that. But Tom wasn't joking. He looked shaken under the anger, like the lack of response scared him more than the junk did. He faced his wife, voice tight now. "I'm sorry, honey, but something's got to be done. I'm taking today off. I'm going over there. I'm not leaving until he stops this." Then Tom marched through the line of tow trucks toward the new neighbor's house and disappeared inside. I didn't follow. I watched from my driveway, then forced myself to leave for work like I didn't feel sick. On my way out, I looked for Helene. She wasn't in her garden. That wasn't unheard of, but it stood out because she was always there in the mornings. And I wanted to ask her what happened when she brought those flowers over. The one day I wanted gossip. She was gone. I went to work, got chewed out for being 10 minutes late, and came home that evening to a quiet street. The trucks were gone. The noise was gone. The next morning, I and the cul-de-sac looked empty again. No tow trucks, no dump trucks, no shouting. I felt relief so strong it was almost embarrassing. Tom's car was still in his driveway, though. He usually left early. That detail nagged at me, but I told myself he was home because he'd taken the day off. I missed Helene again that morning. That made 2 days. Her garden looked untouched, and the plants were starting to droop. That evening, the neighborhood went wrong in a different way. I tried to take a shower and no water came out. I twisted the handle back and forth, getting nothing but a dry hiss. On the 5th turn, the pipes erupted. A torrent of brown liquid blasted from the shower head so hard it blew the fixture clean off. The stream hit the wall, the curtain, my chest, and coated everything with thick, slimy water that smelled like sewage. I fought the handle until I got it shut off, shaking with anger and disgust. The bathroom smelled like a sewer. I smelled like a sewer. I tried the sink. Same brown water. I ended up using baby wipes and trying not to gag. When I reached for my phone to call a plumber, it rang. Fred. "Hey, man," I answered, voice weak. "What's up?" "Dude," Fred said, "is your water messed up too?" "Yeah," I said. "Brown water, all the faucets. It was fine earlier." "So it's the whole neighborhood," he said. "I called a plumber. They said they're taking care of it. Might take a few days." He paused. "Hey," he said, quieter. "Have you heard from Tom?" My stomach tightened. "No." "Why?" "Sarah called me," Fred said. "She hasn't seen him since he went over to that guy's house yesterday." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I said, "Has she called the police?" She tried. They told her he's an adult, and she can't file a missing person report until 48 hours. That was wrong. You can report someone missing immediately if you think something happened. I knew that. Fred knew that too. But that was what they told her. I stared at my bathroom floor, still wet with brown sludge, and felt a sick thought rise. Tom wasn't the first person who went to that house and didn't come back. Helene had gone too. That night I packed a bag and rented a hotel room. I packed for a week just in case. I didn't want to sleep in my house with the water acting like that, and the neighbor's yard turning into a junk mountain. I told myself Tom was probably drunk somewhere. I told myself Helene was visiting family. I told myself everything had normal explanations. But the longer I thought about it, the weaker those explanations got. The next morning, I loaded my car. I still didn't see Helene. Her plants were wilting now. Her hydrangeas were losing their color, drooping like they'd been starved. She used to joke that they were dramatic, that they acted like they were dying after only a couple days without water. Now they really looked like they were dying. I stayed at the hotel for a full week. Fred never called again. I called him and got voicemail. I called Sarah and got nothing. I called the non-emergency line. I called the city. I called anyone I could think of. Nobody gave me the time of day. Nobody acted like this mattered. Eventually, I ran out of clean clothes and forced myself to go back. I told myself if the authorities weren't worried, I shouldn't be either. That's what people say when they're trying not to believe what their own eyes are suggesting. I turned onto my street and almost stopped the car right there. The neighborhood was gone. Not physically gone, not burned down, but transformed. It looked like junk had spread from the new neighbor's property like a disease. Piles of scrap metal, trash bags, broken furniture, rusted parts, rotten food. Everything looked stained. Everything looked older, dirtier, wronger. My house had changed color. The bright white exterior with green trim was now a moldy yellow, paint peeling, the wood looking soft at the edges like it had been wet for years. I stared so hard I barely registered the jolt under my car. My tire popped. A sharp piece of scrap metal. I skidded to a halt. I stepped out and immediately felt a gaze on me. I whirled around and looked across the street at the new neighbor's house. It was the only one that looked untouched. Clean lines, normal siding, normal yard, like reality refused to infect it. But I didn't see him. I decided to run into my house, grab whatever I could, and leave. I didn't want answers. I wanted distance. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys on my front steps. I bent to grab them and heard rustling. Not a small sound. A shift in the piles of junk near Fred's house. Metal moved. Trash bags crinkled. I straightened slowly, eyes locked on the heap. The rustling stopped, then started again, more violent, churning like something was burrowing through it. A shape moved through the trash, not clearly visible, formless, fast, like a shadow wearing garbage. It surged into a pile of bags, then into a mound of newspaper scraps. The papers flew up as if something ran through them. Then it moved again, closer to me. Cans toppled. Plastic tore. Metal rang. It was coming. I snapped out of it and ran. Not to my house, to his. The new neighbor's place looked protected. It looked separate. Like it wasn't part of the rotting world around it. My brain decided that meant safety. The front door was open. I slammed it behind me and leaned against it as banging hit the wood immediately. The frame shook with every impact. I waited, panting, until the banging stopped. Then I turned and saw the inside of his house. It was worse than the outside. Trash piled in drifts, discarded cans, boxes, rotting fruit. The smell was so thick it felt like it stuck to the inside of my lungs. I waded deeper into the house, aiming for the back door. And that's when I saw Tom, or what was left of him. He lay on a stained coffee table in what used to be the living room. It was hard to tell because mold and sludge coated the walls and floor. Flies crawled over him. Maggots worked through the parts of him that were open. He looked like he'd been dead for a long time, not a week. The sight and smell hit me at once. I vomited. Then I heard movement behind me. I turned and found the new neighbor standing there. He didn't speak. He grabbed me and tried to throw me down into the filth. I fought back, stumbling, my calves bumping into something cold and solid. Tom's corpse. The neighbor was stronger than he looked. Tank top stained, jeans ripped, beard unwashed and stiff. His hands were rough and damp. He slipped on my vomit. That's the only reason I got free. I shoved past him and ran, spotting a sliding glass door beyond the kitchen. I tried to wrench it open, but trash jammed the track, stopping it after barely an inch. He charged. I grabbed a stool and threw it into the glass. It shattered. I ran through it, feeling cuts slice my arms and shoulder. Outside, the junkyard spread out like a city. Mounds of scrap. Broken cars lined like streets. Rotting food piled next to metal like everything had been thrown together without thought. The smell was a living thing. Heavy, pushing into me, sticking to my skin. I ran. The neighbor followed, moving through the junk like he belonged there. Like it was his territory, and he knew every path. I couldn't run straight. Every few steps I had to turn because a pile blocked me. And then the junk to my right rustled again. A burst of scrap metal launched toward me. I ducked and barely avoided being hit. Something wrapped around my ankle, a copper wire tightening like a snake. It began dragging me toward the pile. The junk opened, not literally, but in a way that looked like it was making room for me, like a mouth parting. I kicked and screamed and fought until my shoe ripped off and I slid free. My bare foot shredded on metal as I ran, but pain didn't matter, not compared to what was behind me. Then I saw it. One of the moving trucks from his first day. It was half covered in debris, but it was there. I sprinted to it and threw myself into the cab. The key was still in the ignition. I turned it. The engine coughed and started. The neighbor appeared and leaped onto the hood. He banged on the windshield, face twisted. "You're a part of us now," he screamed. "You can't escape." I didn't answer. I slammed the accelerator. He flew off the hood. I hit mounds of trash hard enough to make my teeth clack. I crashed through the fence into the front yard and drove past my rusted car and onto the street. I didn't stop until the cul-de-sac disappeared in the rearview mirror. Even then, the smell didn't leave. It clung to me, inside my nose, on my clothes, in my hair. I made it to a gas station I knew. The clerk let me use his phone. I got a taxi back to my hotel. I stood under a shower for over an hour, scrubbing until my skin burned, but I could still smell it. The next day, I called my uncle. He lived a few states away. I told him I needed to leave, that something happened in my neighborhood, that I couldn't stay. He agreed to pick me up. On the drive, I tried to explain. He listened, but I could tell he didn't believe me fully. I don't blame him. If someone told me that story, I wouldn't believe it either. At his house, I looked up my old street online. Articles came up immediately. The whole neighborhood was gone. Not abandoned, gone. They claimed it was a gas leak, an accident, a sudden catastrophic event. No details, no pictures, no interviews with survivors. It was like it had been erased. There was no proof I wasn't crazy. And for a few days, I thought maybe I could put it behind me. Then the odd things started happening around me. Food spoiling too fast. Dirt appearing where it shouldn't. Along baseboards, in corners, under doors. Trash showing up on the floor even after I threw it out. Little bits, wrappers, rusty bottle caps, shredded paper that didn't belong to anything I owned. And the phrase I heard from the neighbor kept looping in my head. You're part of us now. I don't know if whatever destroyed that place took root in me, or if it followed me, or if it marked me in a way I can't see. I don't know what to do. For now, I'm keeping all the filth that keeps appearing locked in my room. I'm bagging it, sealing it, keeping it contained like it's evidence of something I can't explain. And when I leave my uncle's house, I'm taking it with me. If there's something wrong with me, I don't want him buried in it too. Story 4. I got this job a couple weeks ago, and I'm not gonna lie, it's been a relief financially. It pays well. It's nothing impressive, though. Most days, I just follow people around while they work. I'm still in a training phase, shadowing someone who's been there longer. The company sells paper, I think. That's what I remember from orientation. I honestly haven't been paying close attention. The job is unbelievably boring, and I don't care about it the way I probably should. I care about rent and food. I care about the paycheck. That's it. A few days ago, I saw the vending machine for the first time. It was down one of the connecting hallways, the corridor that links my department to another one. I noticed people standing in front of it. A line. A real line, like it was the only place in the building that mattered. I stepped away from the guy I was shadowing without thinking, and he grabbed my shoulder hard enough to stop me cold. "Don't go over there," he said. I turned, and he actually spun me the rest of the way, so I was facing him. He stared right into my eyes like he needed to make sure the message landed. "Did you hear what I said?" He was weirdly stern. It didn't match him. Most of the time he was quiet and barely acknowledged I existed. This was the most intense I'd seen him since I started. Okay, I said. He let go of my shoulder and kept walking like nothing happened. As he moved away, he muttered, "Good." I stood there for a second, watching his back disappear around the bend. Then I looked back toward the hallway. The line at the machine had grown while I'd been hesitating. Now there was no way I could even pretend to casually step in. I jogged to catch up with my mentor, but the whole thing stuck in my head. I hadn't seen another vending machine anywhere in the building. Not in the break room, not in the lobby, not even in what they called the employee kitchen. I wasn't starving or anything. I usually brought lunch. But the longer I thought about it, the more it bothered me. I also couldn't remember seeing a water fountain. Not one. I started paying more attention after that. I watched people. It seemed like nobody from my department ever went to the vending machine. Only that other department. I'd see them in the hallway sometimes, drifting in groups toward it, forming a line that twisted back into their side of the building, and I watched the way they did it. They weren't just standing there bored, shifting their weight, scrolling their phones like normal people in line. They were tapping on the glass, not like impatient tapping, but like pointing, like they were selecting something by pressing the glass itself. Whatever was in there must be good, I kept thinking, even though that didn't make sense. Later, when I got back to my mentor's cubicle, I finally asked, "Is it for their department?" He had been answering emails. When I spoke, it took him a second to process the question, like I'd interrupted him mid-thought. He turned slightly. Thick black circles sat under his eyes, and he looked at me in a flat, exhausted way that made him seem older than he was. "The vending machine," I clarified. "Is it like a reward for them or something?" He turned back to his computer without answering, but I could see his eyes on me in the reflection of the monitor. The way you can tell when someone is watching without fully turning their head. Then he stood up abruptly. "Fine," he said. "I'll show you." He walked out into the hallway, and I followed, half relieved and half nervous. The line that had been there earlier was gone. The corridor looked normal now, empty and quiet. He stopped before the machine and looked at me. "Stay here," he said. "I'll tell you when to come forward." I nodded, confused. He approached the machine slowly, not like someone walking up to buy a snack, but like someone approaching a wild animal. He kept glancing toward the opening in the wall that led to the other department, turning his head left and right like he was checking for something. Then he faced the machine again and looked it up and down. Only after a few more paranoid checks did he turn back and wave me forward. I walked toward it, and the closer I got, the more twisted his expression became. It was like he was watching me step toward a cliff edge he'd already fallen off. He held up a hand. "Stop." I stopped a few feet away. Again, he checked the hallway. Then he gave me a small nod, like permission. Only then did I actually look at the machine. Chips, soda, candy bars. A normal vending machine behind glass. My mentor let out a nervous little laugh. "Uh-huh," he said, like he'd proven a point he didn't want to make. I looked at him. He didn't look satisfied. He looked like he wanted to run. He started speed walking back toward our department, the kind of fast walk people do when they don't want to look like they're panicking. "Let's go," he said. "Hurry up." I followed him, annoyed and confused. If it was just a vending machine, why was he acting like it was radioactive? As we rounded the corner, I glanced back one more time. For a split second, I thought I saw a face pressed against the glass. It was barely there. More like something my mind assembled out of reflections and shadows. But I saw it clearly enough that my stomach dropped. The mouth moved like it was forming words. "Help me." I stopped without meaning to and took a step back. When I looked again, it was gone. Someone from the other department walked up to the machine. He turned his head and waved at me with a huge smile, like we were old friends. The friendliness didn't fit the situation. It didn't even fit his face. But I waved back because that's what you do when someone waves, and then I forced myself to follow my mentor. Back at his cubicle, I asked the next question I couldn't swallow. "What does that department do?" He stopped typing. He'd been kicking his foot up and down under the desk for a while, a nervous habit. And when my question landed, the kicking stopped. For a second, he didn't move at all. I think he might have stopped breathing for a moment. He looked at me again through the reflection of his screen. "Don't worry about them," he said. Then, as if he'd said too much, he added, "Don't even look at them. Don't talk to them." I watched him type for another minute, then asked quietly, "What if I did?" He paused again and spun around in his chair, not fast, but urgent, like he needed to face me to handle something. "Did you?" he asked. His eyes were locked on mine, waiting. "No," I said quickly. He waited like he didn't believe me. "I've looked at them," I admitted. "But—" He cut me off. "But what?" He wasn't yelling. He wasn't furious. He was assertive in a way that felt like fear trying to sound like authority. "They never looked back at me," I said. It was the only truth I could offer. "I've looked at them, but they never looked back." That seemed to satisfy him. He turned back to his emails and didn't say much for the rest of the day. He left before I did. I waited a while, killed time, then went to the bathroom. I stayed in the stall longer than I needed to, maybe 30 minutes, just to be sure he was gone. When I stepped back into the hallway, I looked down both ends. Empty. The vending machine hallway was visible from where I stood. There was a man at the machine. He didn't look my way. He tapped the glass, reached into the retrieval slot, and pulled out what looked like a bag of chips. Then he started walking back toward his side of the building. Halfway through his first step, he stopped. He turned around slowly, like his neck was on a hinge. He looked directly at me and waved. Before I could wave back, he turned and disappeared into his department. My phone rang. It was my mentor. "You coming?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Sorry." As I walked toward the exit door near the bathroom, I saw it again. The face in the vending machine glass. A flash in the corner of my eye. That same pressed, desperate look. By the time my brain caught up enough to turn and focus, it was gone. The next morning, my mentor and I walked past that corridor again. He glanced down the hallway, then stopped so suddenly I bumped into him. "What are you doing?" I thought, annoyed, and followed his gaze. There was another vending machine now. It looked exactly like the first one. Same size, same shape, same glass, same metal. It stood beside the original, like it had always been there. There was already a line in front of the original machine, but when one of the men in the line turned and waved at me, my mentor dropped his phone. The sound of it hitting the floor felt loud in the hallway. He snapped his head around and stared at me with a look I can only describe as fear, with no filter. Mouth open slightly, eyes too wide. Then he grabbed me and hauled me back toward his desk like he was pulling me away from a fire. He shoved me into my chair and immediately started digging through his emails with frantic hands, like he was searching for something he hoped he'd never see again. When he found whatever it was, he stopped moving altogether. He held his breath. I could see his throat tight, his chest barely moving. "What's going on?" I demanded. He turned toward me, stood up like he was about to explain, and then just left the cubicle. Walked out into the hallway without a word. He returned a minute later with his phone in his hand. "What?" I said again. "I don't know what's happening." He sat down, stared at his monitor, and said, "Don't worry about it." His eyes watched me through the screen reflection, like he didn't trust what I'd do next. I stood up to use the bathroom, mostly because I couldn't sit there feeling watched like that. He turned as soon as he heard the chair scrape. He looked at me. Then he looked down at the floor. Then back to his emails. Like he couldn't decide whether to speak or stay quiet. I walked into the hallway and immediately noticed something. The line was gone again. The corridor was empty. I did need to use the bathroom, but at that point, the vending machines mattered more. I wanted to understand what the big deal was. Why everyone acted like this hallway was an electric fence. I walked toward the original machine. A memory flashed of my mentor's behavior. Him checking the hallway, turning his head left and right like he was making sure something wasn't there. Something in me made me do the same. I stepped into the threshold where the hallways met and held my breath. I don't know why. It was instinct, like a kid too scared to walk down a dark hallway even though he knows the light switch is right there. I leaned around the corner and looked left. Long, empty hallway. I looked right. Long, empty hallway. And that was when I realized something that I'd never questioned before. From that angle, the hallway looked wrong. Too clean, too straight. No side doors, no branching corridor, no entryway into the other department. But the other department existed. I'd seen the people. I'd followed my mentor through parts of the building. So why did the corridor feel like it ended in emptiness? I forced myself to focus on the machine. Up close, it looked normal. But there were differences. There were no buttons, no keypad, no coin slot, no card reader, no place to pay. So that's why they tapped the glass, I thought. I glanced at the second machine beside it. This one was different inside. Dark. No lights, no product spiral. The interior looked empty, unfinished, like a shell. A note was taped to the bottom of its glass. Interior installed soon. I stared at that line, trying to interpret it. Snacks installed soon? Shelves? Stock? Then I saw it again in the reflection. Not help me this time. The mouth formed a different word. Run. My body twisted around instantly, heart slamming. Nothing. No face, no person, no movement. And then, like he had been standing there the whole time, and my brain had simply refused to notice him. One of the men from the other department appeared in my vision. He didn't step around the corner. He didn't approach with footsteps. He was just there. He smiled at me. Wide, friendly, too friendly. My mouth opened to say something, anything, but my mind screamed not to. Don't speak. Don't engage. Don't let him know you can see what you're seeing. I backed away and walked fast toward my desk, turning my head every couple steps. The man stayed near the second machine, reading the note like it was fascinating. When he finished, he looked up at me and his smile widened. I rounded the corner and nearly ran straight into my mentor. He grabbed me by the shoulders and slammed me against the wall hard enough to make my shoulder blade sting. Why? He demanded. I stared at him, shocked. What do you mean, why? Leave, he hissed. Leave right now and don't come back. Then he let go and walked away like he couldn't afford to be seen near me anymore. I tried to follow him, confused and angry, but he turned back, pointed at the exit and said, Leave, now. I didn't know what else to do, so I left. As I walked past that corridor one last time, I looked in. There was a line again. But the line wasn't for the original vending machine. It was for the new one. They weren't tapping buttons. There were no buttons. They weren't inserting money. There was nowhere to pay. They were just standing there waiting, like something was about to be installed at any moment, like the machine was about to come alive. As I passed the bend, they all turned their heads toward me at the same time, all of them, in unison, and they smiled. I went home and tried to act like a normal person. The day was half over, so I killed time on YouTube. When night came, I went to bed. I remember lying there staring at my ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just stress, just a weird office culture, just people messing with the new guy. But I felt heavier than usual, more tired, like sleep was being poured into my body. Each breath got slower. My eyelids sank, and right before my eyes fully closed, I thought I saw someone standing in the corner of my room. Then I woke up somewhere else. It was dark. I couldn't see. I couldn't move. My body felt pinned, restrained, like straps held me down. I tried to shift my arms. Nothing. A light snapped on above me so fast it felt like it stabbed my eyes. I blinked hard until my vision adjusted. There was glass in front of my face. Not a window, not a screen. Vending machine glass. My eyes were locked forward, trapped on the other side of it. I tried to turn my head and couldn't. I tried to scream and didn't know how. My breath felt shallow, squeezed. In the dim reflection, I saw what looked like a man my age tangled inside the machine beside me. His body was twisted into the metal like it had been folded and threaded through parts that should never fit flesh. It was hard to separate skin from casing. He shifted slightly and pressed his forehead to the glass, closing his eyes. I thought I saw a tear slip out before it fell. In the corner of my vision, through the hallway that should lead to my old department, I saw a figure I recognized. My mentor. Or someone shaped like him. I couldn't turn enough to confirm. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared. Then the men came. Not from the hallway, from the walls. Like doors existed that I couldn't see. Like the building had openings only they knew how to use. They formed a line in front of me. Another line in front of the original machine. Two lines, stretching back, bending out of sight. One man stood closest. He smiled and tapped on the glass, as if pointing at what he wanted. Something dropped inside me. I felt it as pain, sharp and deep, like something being pulled out of me. Not a cut, not a tear, more like a piece of me being removed by force. Then the machine made a dull thump as something fell into the retrieval slot. They kept tapping, and every time they tapped, something was taken. It hurt so much that my body shook against restraints I still couldn't see. And the worst part was that I was still whole, at least visually. I could still feel my limbs. I could still breathe. It was like the machine had found a way to harvest without killing, to take without leaving obvious damage. The line didn't end. More men arrived, smiling, patient, waiting their turn. The tapping echoed like a steady beat, and with every tap came pain and another thump, another item dispensed. I don't know what they're getting from me. I don't know what I've become. I don't know if this is my life now. I only know the lines keep forming. And every time they tap on the glass, it hurts worse. Story 5. I don't really know how to start this, so I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Jay. I work night shift at a 24-hour diner. I got hired not too long ago as kitchen staff, or at least that's what the ad said. When the owner hired me, he told me the highway used to be busy enough that staying open 24/7 made sense. Now the highway looks dead most nights. The couple nights he trained me were slow. We got a few regulars, I guess. Apparently, it's enough to keep the doors open. That part isn't my business. The place is exactly what you'd expect from a diner built in the 60s. Run down, a little dirty, a little greasy. Neon signs, checkered floor, the whole vibe. It's not glamorous, but it's close to my apartment, and it pays my bills, so I'm not complaining. My therapist keeps telling me structure might be good for me, and she also told me I should try journaling. I don't know. It sounds like something I'll do for 3 days and then quit. But I'm trying to listen to her lately. So I guess this is me trying. The owner gave me the basic rules and tasks. Clean this, stock that. Don't let anyone in the back because I'm the only one here overnight. The usual stuff. Except for one rule that felt weird. He told me not to clean one specific booth. Didn't say it like a suggestion either. He was serious. He said a regular likes to sit there, and he cleans it himself when he's done. He made it clear he didn't want me touching it. It didn't seem like a big deal to me. One less booth to wipe down. But the owner said it with the kind of tone you use when you're trying to make sure someone understands there won't be a second warning. He also said night shift can get a little weird sometimes. I figured that was just how people talk about overnight jobs. Strange customers, drunks, people passing through. I didn't think much of it. Tonight, when I clocked out, my 3-day training period was officially over. So tomorrow night, I'll be here alone for the first time. I bought a cheap phone this morning, like my therapist suggested. Mostly because if it's slow, at least I can write this stuff down instead of staring at the wall until my eyes bleed. I'm going to try to keep up with this. No promises. Jay logging off. Night 1. I pulled into the parking lot around 6:40 p.m. The lot was empty, but second shift was still inside. The sign outside was bright enough to feel like it was shining directly into my skull. It read, "Rise and dine. Open 24 hours." The big lights outside had this constant hum to them, like they were vibrating in the air. Everything about the place felt tired, like it was pushing itself to stay awake. I parked my beat-up car, got out, and walked inside. The smell hit me right away. Grill grease, stale coffee, and that old cleaner scent that never quite covers anything. I poured myself a generous cup of coffee and clocked in. Mickey, one of the guys from second shift, told me they'd only had a couple customers the whole evening. He said it like he was warning me. I didn't mind the quiet, honestly. I was hoping I could stretch the cleaning and stocking out long enough to make the night go faster. 10 hours is a long time when the world goes dead. My shift was 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. 5 hours passed and nothing happened. No customers, no cars, just the lights buzzing and me getting caffeine in me like it was life support. I cleaned everything I could think of. Floors, booths, bar top, bathrooms, kitchen floor, even the grill. I was pouring myself another cup of coffee because apparently I wanted to die by heart palpitations when I heard it. The front door opened. Jingle. That little bell sound, clear and sharp. I did the greeting the owner told me to use. "Hi. Welcome in. Have a seat anywhere." I'm sure I sounded annoyed. I didn't even try to hide it. But then something happened that made me stop mid-pour. No one was there. The door had moved. I'd heard the bell. I'd seen the door swing and close again. But the diner was empty. I set the coffee pot down slowly and looked around the room, trying to convince my brain it had glitched. Like I'd imagined the bell because I was tired. Then I saw him. A bald man was sitting in the only booth I hadn't cleaned. The booth the owner told me not to touch. He wasn't there a second ago. I know that. I would have seen him. The diner was empty. I'd been staring straight at the front area. But he was there now, sitting like he'd been there all night. I tried to focus on his face, and my vision blurred. Not just a normal blur like my eyes needed time. It was like my brain refused to hold his features in place. The moment I tried to study him, pain sparked behind my eyes. A migraine, fast and sharp, like someone flicked a switch in my skull. I backed away without meaning to and went into the back room. My hands were trembling a little when I dug through my bag. I found a migraine pill, dry swallowed it, and stood there for a second trying to calm down. I told myself this was exhaustion. Coffee and no food. Maybe I was starting to get one of those headaches that makes your vision weird. Maybe I just hadn't noticed him coming in. Maybe the bell had distracted me and he'd slipped into the booth quietly. I walked back out. He was still there. I grabbed my little order pad and walked over, trying to act normal. Curiosity and fear mixed in my chest like gasoline. I stopped at the end of the booth and started to ask what he wanted. Before I finished, he spoke. Low voice, rough, like gravel. Coffee. Black. He never looked up at me. Normally, I'd make a sarcastic comment about manners, but my mouth wouldn't work right. Everything about him felt off, like the air around that booth was different than the rest of the diner. So I just went and poured him coffee. I brought it back, set it down, and asked if he wanted anything else. Without looking up, he said one word. No. That was it. I went back behind the counter and sat down, pretending to check something on my phone while I watched him out of the corner of my eye. Every time I tried to look straight at him, that headache feeling surged again. It wasn't even just pain. It was a sense of wrongness, like my mind was warning me not to focus too hard. He sat there sipping black coffee for about an hour, maybe longer. I wasn't timing it. He didn't ask for a refill, didn't ask for food, didn't move like a normal person moves. He just stared straight ahead and drank slowly, like time didn't matter to him. Then I heard the doorbell jingle. I looked up. He was gone. I didn't see him stand. I didn't hear him walk. I didn't see him cross the diner to the door. I didn't see anything. I only heard the bell. And suddenly, the booth was empty. That should have been the end of it, but my eyes drifted to the table. There was a $20 bill sitting there for a $1 coffee. I walked closer, cautiously, like the bill might bite me. And that's when I noticed something else. The booth was spotless, not wiped down clean, not someone quickly cleaned up after themselves clean. Spotless like it had been scrubbed and detailed, like someone had spent time on it with real cleaning supplies. I didn't see any rag. I didn't see any spray bottle. I didn't see anything that would explain it. On the table, next to the 20, was a $1 coin, meaning he'd paid for his coffee, and left 19 as a tip. I stood there staring at the money, trying to decide whether I was grateful or scared. I don't even know how to explain the feeling. But it was like I'd been reminded that the owner's rule wasn't some quirky diner thing. It was survival. After that, the rest of the shift was quiet again. I had one more customer, an old trucker named Bobby. People called him Porky, apparently because he stuttered and because he was a big guy. I'd overheard Mickey and the owner talking about him earlier. It didn't bother him at all. He actually seemed proud of it. He said it used to be his call sign back when he was on the road. He looked like you'd expect an older trucker to look. Tall, beer gut, big gray-dark beard, thick southern accent. He told me a story about a prostitute, a lot lizard, as he called it, who looked and sounded like a woman but turned out to be a dude. He laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. He ordered 2 eggs over easy, hash browns, and coffee. Normal customer, normal order, normal interaction. He left me $6 on an $11 check with a note on the receipt where the tip goes. "Keep it up, kid." That little note honestly made me feel better than it should have. Something about it felt grounding, like proof the night wasn't entirely off the rails. After that, nothing else happened. I finished the last of the cleaning, restocked what I could, and waited for first shift. At 5 a.m., the morning crew came in looking bright-eyed and weirdly cheerful, like they were excited to be alive at that hour. It annoyed me more than it should have. I grabbed my stuff, clocked out, and drove back to my apartment. Now I'm sitting in bed typing this, and I'm about to crash hard. But I can't stop thinking about that booth. And the fact that I still couldn't tell you what that bald man looked like, beyond those 2 details. White, bald. Everything else about his face just slid away. And I don't like the idea that there might be a customer in this diner who can sit down in front of you and make your brain refuse to see him. Jay logging off. Story 6. One time we were outside playing fetch. It was a sunny day, but the wind was cold enough to make my ears hurt. Sadie was a good girl. She slept in my bed even though Mama said she wasn't supposed to. I couldn't help it. She was my best friend. And when she curled up against my legs at night, it made the house feel less empty. Mama used to say Sadie was an angel, God sent down for us after Daddy passed. Mama didn't smile much after he died, but she smiled when she said that. Like she wanted to believe it so badly that it had to be true. Our backyard is really big, but I can't throw very far. My arm gets tired fast, and the stick always lands closer than I want it to. Sadie never cared. She'd chase it, even if it only went a few feet, tail wagging so hard her whole body shook. Sometimes after school, we'd stay back there for hours. I'd throw the stick, Sadie would bring it back, and I'd talk to her like she understood every word. That day, I threw the stick as hard as I could. I remember that part clearly because I wanted to impress her. Like she'd be proud of me for finally making it go far. The stick left my hand and the wind came rushing through the yard like I'd never seen before. Not just a gust. It felt like the air changed suddenly, like the wind got heavy and angry all at once. The sky still looked bright, but the wind felt like it was dragging something in from somewhere else. Mama always said storms can sneak up on you, that clouds can move fast. But this wasn't like regular storm clouds. Something black came with the wind. At first I thought it was smoke, like someone burning leaves in the distance. But it was too thick, too dark. It didn't drift the way smoke drifts. It moved like it had muscles. And inside it, I swear I saw something flash. like lightning trapped inside a dirty cloud. The black smoke reached up and grabbed my stick out of the air. I don't know how else to say it. The stick was flying, and then it wasn't flying on its own anymore. It changed direction, lifted higher, and shot across the yard like something had thrown it. It went so far it didn't even feel like my backyard anymore. Sadie bolted. She ran like she always did, fast, happy, focused. She thought it was a game. She thought I'd thrown it extra far for her. I shouted her name right away because I didn't like how high the stick went. It wasn't normal. It wasn't fun. "Sadie, come back." She didn't slow down. She didn't even turn her head. The stick kept going toward the old creaky gate. The gate Mama never lets me go near. The one that leads out into the front yard. Mama says it's bound to fall over one day. That the hinges are weak and the wood is rotting, and it isn't safe. Sadie ran straight toward it anyway. And then something really weird happened. On the other side of the gate, right where the yard ends and the front path begins, I saw a man. Not a normal man. He looked like he was made of the same black smoke that had grabbed the stick. Like he'd been poured out of the air and shaped into a person. His face was mostly shadow. I couldn't see his eyes, but I knew he was looking at me. I felt it the way you feel someone staring, even when you don't want to believe it. He seemed excited. That's the part that makes my stomach twist, even now. He didn't feel angry. He didn't feel like a scary movie monster. He felt eager, like he was waiting for something, and it was finally happening. I heard a sound that was like a chuckle, soft and mean. Not loud enough for Mama to hear inside, but loud enough that it crawled into my skin. Then the gate swung open, on its own. It didn't creak the way it normally does when I push it. It moved smoothly, like someone held it from the other side and pulled, like it had been waiting for permission and finally got it. Sadie charged through. I screamed for her to stop, and I started running after her, but I was too far away. My feet felt slow, like the ground was thick. My throat burned from yelling her name. The stick kept going. It rose higher than Mr. Brady's old oak tree across the street. The tree is huge, taller than the houses, and the stick flew above it like it was nothing. Like it wanted to leave the whole neighborhood. Sadie followed. She ran out into the road without looking. She didn't stop at the curb. She didn't hesitate the way she usually does when she hears cars. A car came fast. Too fast. It was a shade of green that made me feel sick in a way I didn't understand at first. It reminded me of how I felt when Mama and Daddy used to fight about his drinking. When Daddy's face would turn red and Mama's voice would get sharp, and I'd sit in my room with a pillow over my head and hope it would stop. The green car didn't slow down. It didn't even swerve. It hit Sadie like she was nothing. Mama says that's what happened. She says a car hit our dog, and it was a horrible accident. And it happens to pets all the time. She says the driver probably didn't even see her. But Mama didn't see what I saw. The front of the car dropped low as it passed, like the car's nose tilted down on purpose. Under the front bumper was one of those scoop things Daddy had on his car before his accident. I don't know what it's called. It was like a wide mouth made of metal. And it scooped Sadie up. Not just hit her and throw her aside. It lifted her. I saw her legs go up under the car like she'd fallen into a trap. Her body tumbled. And for one awful second, I saw her face turn toward me. her mouth open like she was going to bark, like she was going to call for me. Then I saw the car's mouth. Not a normal part of a car. Not just metal. It looked like teeth. Too many teeth. Row after row inside that scoop shape. Like something had built a mouth under the car where a mouth shouldn't be. Sadie disappeared into it, like she'd been swallowed. The car kept going. It didn't stop. It didn't brake. It didn't even hesitate. 1 second she was there, and the next second the road was empty, like she never existed at all. I ran to the street, screaming her name until my lungs felt like they were tearing. I looked down the road, expecting to see her body somewhere. On the pavement, in the grass, anywhere. Nothing. No blood, no fur, no broken collar, no sign of her at all. Just the wind, and the gate still hanging open behind me. Mama came outside when she heard me crying. She grabbed me and held me so tight it hurt. She kept saying it was an accident. She kept saying we'd find Sadie. She kept saying maybe Sadie ran off hurt and scared and would come home. But Mama's voice sounded like she was trying to convince herself more than me. Because if Sadie really got hit by a car, then where is she? People find pets after accidents. They find bodies. They find something. Fur, a collar, a mark on the road, proof that it happened the way everyone says it happened. But we found nothing, not even a trace. And sometimes, when the wind picks up and the old gate creaks in its frame, I think about that smoke man on the other side. I think about the way he chuckled. I think about how excited he looked, like he wasn't surprised at all. Like he knew the stick would fly. Like he knew Sadie would chase it. Like he knew the car was coming. And I can't stop wondering if it was really an accident. Or if someone opened the gate on purpose and let something hungry into our street. Because Mama didn't see the mouth. But I did. And I don't think cars are supposed to eat dogs. Story 7. Look, man, I haven't slept properly in 2 weeks. If you don't raise my dose, I'm going to kill myself in front of your house. Tonight, it wasn't my proudest moment. Desperation doesn't bring pride with it. It brings ugly honesty. And sometimes it brings threats you don't even mean. Words that come out because you need someone to finally understand how close to the edge you are. Dr. Tennyson ran his fingers through his beard with mild exasperation and sighed like he'd heard versions of this too many times. You have to stop saying things like that, Gregory, he said. I'm a mandated reporter. I am legally required to take those statements seriously. His accent was honey in my ear, even when he was scolding me. I'd been seeing him since the accident back in 2015. Long enough to get comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. Long enough to forget he had paperwork and laws and liability, not just a couch and a sympathetic face. I swallowed hard and tried to soften it. I'm sorry, Doc, I said. It's just, I can't sleep. The nightmare keeps me up all night, and the fluorescent bulbs at work make my headaches feel like someone's drilling into my skull. I let out a slow breath. I'm falling apart. Please. Pretty please. Tennyson watched me for a moment, like he was reading my face instead of listening to my words. Fine, he said at last. But you call me if anything changes. Anything at all. Relief hit me so hard I almost felt dizzy. Thank you, I said quickly. Really? I hope it helps you rest, he replied. I can see it in your eyes. This has eaten at you, but I promise you, it isn't forever. It's only for now. As an adult, you learn that people who genuinely care, people who give even a small fraction of a damn, are rare. Even when they're professionals getting paid to care, their kindness can still matter. "Thank you, Doctor," I said. "Have a nice day." I scheduled my next appointment at the front desk and stepped back outside into the brisk evening air. Cold wind hit my chest and went straight through my Talking Heads t-shirt like it wasn't fabric at all. It sank into my bones. The sky was already dark, the streets already quiet. I've had the nightmare for 5 years. Every night, exactly the same. I close my eyes and suddenly, I'm someone else. An older man, at least 50. Gray hair, bushy eyebrows, hazel eyes. Usually the first thing I see is his face in a rearview mirror, staring back at me with a tired intensity that makes me feel guilty even though I don't know why. Then I feel a hand, his hand, my hand, gripping a key in the ignition. And then it happens the way it always happens. His sensations bleed into mine. His body replaces mine. The longer the dream lasts, the less I remember my real life. I stop being Gregory, and I become him, swallowed by his thoughts and his instincts, as if they're stronger than my own. I pull the key out, step out of the car, walk across damp grass toward Mr. Puntrell's side yard gate. Puntrell is a school bus driver for the county. Everyone likes him. Dependable. Quiet. The kind of man you don't think about until he's suddenly missing. In the dream, he hasn't shown up for work for 3 days. He's older, and everyone has been waiting for the call that says he's finally gone. Most of his family is already dead. Between war and time and bad luck, he's been carved down to almost nothing. But he's still been driving the county's kids for over 20 years. So when he doesn't show, people worry. Arthur, because that's the man I become, though I didn't know his name for years, flips the latch on the gate, quiet as possible, and steps into Puntrell's yard. The bus sits there in its usual spot, gravel and mud. The yard looks normal, no movement. Arthur walks up the porch steps. They creak under his weight. He knocks. No answer. He knocks again. This time the door swings open. Inside the house is orderly, clean, reasonable. The curtains are drawn. The electric bill is unpaid. Darkness sits in the rooms like a blanket. A click. Arthur's flashlight snaps on. "Hey," he calls, and his voice always sounds wrong in my head. Weathered and gruff, but uncertain. The first few times I had the dream, I didn't even realize it was me speaking. It took me months to understand the voice belonged to the body I was wearing. "Hey, Bill," Arthur calls. "You in there, bud?" He moves through the living room, armchairs, side tables, TV above the mantel, kitchen, shelves with little decorations. Not my style, but normal. No signs of struggle. He calls again. No reply. Down the hall, a small bathroom halfway between living room and bedroom. The flashlight barely reaches the shower curtain. The corners swallow light like they want to stay hidden. Then Puntrell's bedroom door. It looms, not physically, but in the way certain doors feel in dreams, like they hold a challenge. Arthur opens it. Empty. "Fuck's sake, Bill," he mutters. "Where the hell are you?" Then Arthur walks back through the house, slower now, his unease growing heavier. The silence presses into his skin. And here's the part that always makes the dream feel like a punishment. When we exit the house, the air outside is colder than when we arrived. The sun is setting too fast, sinking like someone dropped it. Crimson light bleeds through tall trees ringing Puntrell's property, and the whole yard looks bruised. This is usually where I used to wake up, Not wake up like you open your eyes in bed. Wake up like I regain myself inside the dream. Like I become aware again and start fighting the fact that I'm trapped in someone else's body. Arthur's voice croaks out the same sentence every time. Stop doing this to me, please. I can't keep doing this. And I respond using his voice because I can't speak with my own. I'm sorry. It's not me. I don't want this either. At first, Arthur argued. The first few times he begged, he demanded, he tried to fight back. Over the years, he wore down. Last night, before everything changed, he only whimpered, please, over and over until the word became meaningless. Then the dream drags us forward. Our feet crunch through dead leaves streaked with dark veins of rot. We walk toward the school bus. And then, without any choice, we're peering inside. Arthur's arm lifts the flashlight and angles it through dusty glass. The seats are occupied. Human shapes under filthy white sheets. I stare at them every time, disbelief sticking in my throat, and every time the same stupid thought flickers through my mind. Wouldn't it be fucked if, before I can finish, the bodies stir, all at once? They fling off the sheets and reveal faces melted by decades of decay. They crowd the windows, mouths open, eyes too wide, and they all scream the same two words. Come inside. They chant it again and again, slamming dried fists against the glass. Arthur falls backward onto the gravel. From where we sit, flat on the ground, we can see Puntrell in the driver's seat. Glassy eyes locked on us. His face is pressed close to the window. Even without sound, I can read his lips. He's screaming too. He reaches up and presses the button. The bus doors fold open. Then the dead flood out. Hands grab our arms and legs. Fingers like sticks. Nails like broken glass. They drag us toward the open door. We kick. We flail. We can't stop it. And just as Arthur's head crosses the threshold, I wake up. Every time. I've timed it. The dream takes about 15 minutes. Most nights I fall asleep, have it, wake up sweating, then repeat the cycle until morning. I live in those 15 minutes like it's a second job. It fucking sucks. That night, after Tennyson raised my dose, I got home before dark. The city was already quiet because the news had been screaming about a cold snap. People were hoarding groceries, empty shelves, everyone hiding inside like winter was war. I took a shower and stared at myself in the mirror afterward. The dark circles under my eyes weren't circles anymore. They were bruised bands of purple. My eyes were bloodshot. My skin looked gray. I looked like a person being hollowed out from the inside. I sat on the edge of my bed with a glass of water in my hand, watching the surface swirl. The new pills were rich green and much bigger than my old dose. The idea of swallowing them made my stomach twist. Not because of the size, but because I knew what they'd do. The medication used to be a miracle. Tennyson had called it a magic bullet for insomnia. And for a while it was. But after the nightmare started, I stopped taking it. Not because it didn't work. Because the dream changed when I took it. The corpses in the bus would stop screaming. They would move slower. They would speak calmly, as if they knew I was drugged and helpless. Some would laugh softly. Some would cry. One would stare at me and drool thick ropes of saliva, smiling like he'd been waiting for me. They still spoke in unison. Come inside. And the words felt like they sank under my skin, like they were being planted. The first morning I noticed the difference. I flushed the pills, even though I felt more rested than I had in years. I decided then it wasn't worth it. Now, staring at the new bottle, I wondered if I'd made the wrong decision. Ah, fuck it, I muttered. Worst case, I die, right? My dog, Sammy, a grumpy old beagle, stared at me like he was offended. Oh, come on, I'm kidding, I said. Jesus, you're worse than Dr. Tennyson. I swallowed the pills, chugged the metallic water, and laid down. The second my head hit the pillow, I was gone. Not a slow drift into sleep. A drop. I opened my eyes to a dining room I'd never seen. Taxidermy covered the walls. A stuffed deer head stared down at me. Shelves lined with dead animals posed like trophies. I stood from the table, leaving behind a Salisbury steak TV dinner like it had been my meal. I walked through the house, noticing clutter everywhere, old junk threatening to swallow each room. I found a mirror and my stomach tightened when I saw the face looking back. Arthur. The old man again. This time, though, the dream started earlier. Before the drive, before Puntrell's house, before the bus. I searched drawers, cabinets, anywhere I could. I needed something. Any clue about who he was. I wished I'd done this years ago. I didn't know why the thought came so clearly now, but my hand went to my back pocket automatically. A wallet, a license, Arthur Weaver, 57, hazel eyes, 5 feet 10, 240 pounds. All right, Arthur, I croaked in his dry throat. Why the fuck do I keep dreaming of you? No answer. Then the phone rang, and it was like I lost control again. Arthur's body moved without my permission. He picked up the landline. Hello, Joyce? Arthur, hi. How are you doing today? I didn't know Joyce, but Arthur did. His mouth moved like it had rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times. Well, I'm doing all right, Joyce, he said. Still ain't been sleeping well. And yourself? Joyce told him about Puntrell missing, asked him to check on Bill since he lived nearby. Arthur made a gross comment about being happy to help a pretty lady, and I felt disgust bloom in my chest when I realized I could feel his body respond to her voice. Then we were driving. 99 Luftballons played on the radio. He navigated to Puntrell's house like he'd done it before, and the moment Arthur reached for the key, I snapped back into control. I tried to drive away. I tried to move his hand off the ignition. It felt like swimming against a riptide. Arthur resisted me. Not consciously, not with words, but with force. Like the dream itself demanded the route be followed. So we went in. We searched. We found nothing. We walked out into the yard. Stop doing this to me, Arthur begged again. Please, I can't keep doing this. And I answered him because that's what I always did. I'm sorry. It's not me. I don't want this either. This time we were both sobbing. I felt it in his chest, in his throat, in his shaking hands. The bus loomed ahead, and the bodies were already waiting. No slow reveal, no surprise. Their eyes shone from behind the glass like hungry animals. Puntrell tapped gently against the driver's side window and mouthed something I hadn't seen before. You comin', Arthur? Arthur's head shook no, and I agreed with him. But Puntrell shrugged like it didn't matter and opened the doors anyway. They were silent. Only ragged breathing, the wet sound of dead lungs. 100 hands grabbed us. They dragged us across gravel. Arthur struggled hard enough to tear his nails clean off. I felt blood smear across stone. Pain shot through nerves so real it made my vision blur. And then we crossed the threshold. But this time, there was no icy burning, no waking. We were inside the bus. They yanked us upright by the hair. They shoved us around, laughing, jabbing finger bones into Arthur's hips. The stench was overwhelming. Mold, rot, old blood, damp fabric. And we vomited again. When they finally stopped, I saw them properly. Their eyes bulged too large from sockets. Their bodies were withered like starved animals. Fingers long and thin like bare branches. Mouths stained dark. A blonde woman with a chunk missing from her throat grabbed Arthur's wrist and made a hissing sound that wasn't words. The bus went quiet, like the crowd respected her. Something rustled in the back. It unfolded from beneath a pile of old newspapers. Limbs, too many limbs, sprawled across the seats. Long, jointed, spider-like arms stretching until they filled the bus. At the center was a darkness deeper than the space around it. A silhouette. A woman's shape with a wolf's head. The limbs seemed to grow from her spine, wrapping around her like a crown. She looked at Arthur, and the look was more felt than seen. "Why have you brought me this old man?" she asked. Her voice was velvet and poison. The blonde woman stepped forward and whispered something, that he hadn't been brought. He came on his own. "Is that so?" the shadow said, amused. "Why did you come here, old man?" Arthur tried to bargain, tried to plead, said he wouldn't call the police, begged to be let go. The bus filled with laughter. "You won't," the shadow purred. "He's yours." And the horde surged, biting, ripping, clawing at Arthur's flesh. Arthur screamed. I screamed. Then the shadow said one word. "Stop." She was suddenly in front of us. The dead parted for her like she owned them. Her wolf skull hovered inches from Arthur's face. Hot breath washed over skin. And then, two sapphire eyes sparked into life in that void, brilliant and hungry. "Hello," she said softly. "Young man." Her jaws snapped forward. Arthur's skull crushed like a can. I woke up screaming, bolting upright, convinced for one wild second I was still inside the bus. Morning light streamed through my window. Morning doves called outside. Sammy sat in the corner watching me like he was tired of my nonsense. "Dude," I muttered, voice shaking. "Your worst nightmare is the mailman." My hands were trembling as I grabbed my phone. Arthur Weaver. I searched the name. A Facebook profile came up immediately. And the photo was him. The same face from the mirror, the same eyes. Not a dream face, a real person. Then I searched William Puntrell. Missing, bus driver, no family. The photo showed him sitting behind the wheel. I stared at it too long, half expecting him to press his face against my screen and mouth the words, "Come inside." I closed the browser and called Dr. Tennyson. "Gregory," he answered groggy. "It's 6 in the morning. What's going on?" "You told me to call if anything changed," I said. A pause. "So the medication helped you sleep?" "No," I said. "Yes, but that's not the point. The dream went farther. And I got his name. He's real. Puntrell is real. I think this isn't just a dream." Tennyson was silent long enough that I could hear his breathing. "I have an opening at 9, he said. A few hours later, I sat on his couch and told him everything. Arthur Weaver, Puntrell's bus, the shadow woman, the sapphire eyes, the way Arthur begged me to stop. When I finished, Tennyson took my phone, looked at the screen, then handed it back with trembling fingers. He sat still for a moment. Then he said quietly, "Gregory, Google Thomas Botticelli." I did. Missing father of 3. Article after article. Tennyson's face went tight. "Fuck," he whispered. I'd never heard him swear before. It sounded wrong coming out of him. "Botticelli was a patient," he said. "Years ago, he described a dream similar to yours. He came to my office twice. Then he didn't come back. I assumed the medication worked. He swallowed, and I saw the guilt take shape in his throat." "Did he go missing May 31st? I asked. I scanned the article. "Yeah. Failed to appear for work May 31st. Tennyson's eyes stayed on the floor. "I prescribed him the sleep aid on May 30th, he said. "I think I've been leading you astray." I tried to speak, tried to tell him it wasn't his fault, but he cut me off with a tired shake of his head. "I'm going to research local legend," he said. "If anything sounds right, I'll call." "What? That's it?" I snapped, panic turning into anger because anger was easier than crying. "I bring you proof of the supernatural, and you're telling me to come back next week?" Tennyson's jaw clenched. "If I keep guessing, I could make it worse," he said. "I'm sorry." I left his office furious and terrified. The streets were empty again. The cold snap had driven people inside. I walked to the library because I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to feel like I was doing something. I spent hours digging through books on dreams, demons, shadow people, folklore. Nothing fit perfectly. Pieces fit, not the whole. By the time I left, it was evening. The library doors were frosted. Wind cut through the street. "Excuse me." A man in a tan suit hurried past me, bumping my shoulder hard. Then I heard it. Rushing feet. A tide of them. I turned and saw grinning, decayed faces rushing toward me. The same eyes, the same hunger. I ran. Snowflakes whipped past streetlights. The horde whooped and laughed as they chased. I turned randomly, cut down alleys, pushed through a construction site. Fingers brushed my back. I elbowed someone, a rotten skull, a body crumpled. I glanced back and saw a drooling ghoul wearing a rusted chain necklace, fingers hanging from it like charms. Then the horde stomped right over him, crushing him into the ground as they surged forward. I saw a subway entrance. I slammed the gate down behind me, and they immediately grabbed it, pulling the metal like it was paper. I ran down into the station, but the lights dimmed with every step, as if the underground was swallowing illumination. On the platform, she waited, the shadow. 7 feet tall, eyes like blue fire. For a second, she looked almost beautiful in the dim, carved by thin lines of emerald light. A goddess of obsidian. A shape that made my body want to step closer even while my mind screamed. The horde arrived behind me and shoved me forward. Her limbs wrapped across the exit. "You can't run from me," she whispered. "Come, boy. Don't make me chase you." She moved, closing distance too fast. Her breath was hot on my neck. I raised my fist, and a punch slammed into my jaw. Light snapped back on. Sound returned. I hit the platform hard. A real man stood over me, furious. "Dude, what the fuck is your problem?" The subway arrived. People pushed past me. The world moved like nothing happened. I staggered home shaking, jumped at shadows, clutched my keys like a weapon. My apartment door flew inward when I turned the knob. Before I could react, they were inside. The horde swarmed me. A black cloth went over my head. Ragged hands beat me until I dropped. When I woke, it was dark and smelled like mildew and rot. The bus, not a dream. I was stuck to the roof by oily black ooze, glued in place. I tried to scream and only managed to whimper. The bus was moving, not by engine. I heard chains and shambling feet outside. trees slid past the windows. Then it stopped. The horde surged in. The ghoul with the finger necklace stepped up, drooling. "Time to go, pretty boy," he said. Then he sliced my left index finger off like it was nothing. I screamed. The ooze tightened around my arm like it was alive, holding me still. One by one, he took all my fingers, sloppy, fast, leaving ragged stumps. He tucked them away like trophies. Then the horde tore me free from the ceiling. The ooze boiled and sizzled around their limbs like frying gelatin. They dragged me into a clearing with a massive sapphire slab in the center. She waited there, shifting shapes, eyes fixed and hungry. "Finally," she said. "You have no idea how long I've waited for one like you." The dead laid me at her feet. I tried to beg. She laughed. Then she called the ghoul forward, the one who took my fingers. She punished him for disobeying her, disintegrating him with a touch, and then gunshots cracked through the trees. The horde panicked, bodies dropped. I rolled off the sapphire and ran. The bus doors slammed. A figure sprinted toward me through the chaos. Dr. Tennyson. He threw a sawed-off shotgun onto my chest as he was tackled. "Aim for something important," he yelled. The doors slammed shut. I turned. Her eyes burned in the dark. "Enough," she said. "Come here." "Hell no," I said, and pulled the trigger. Pellets hit her eyes with a metallic ping. Cracks spidered across the sapphire. Green vapor hissed out. The eyes crumbled to the ground like broken jewels. The bus doors creaked open. I stumbled out into freezing night, bleeding, shaking. "Dr. Tennyson," I shouted. He emerged from the trees, bruised and bleeding through his shirt, but alive. "Hospital," he said, slipping an arm under my shoulder. "You need a hospital." "Thanks, Doc," I slurred. "How'd you find me?" "When you didn't answer," he said, breathless. "I assumed the worst." Pundrell's address was simple. The tire tracks into the woods were not. We reached his car. He drove. The world felt unreal in the way it does after you survive something you weren't supposed to survive. Half conscious, I managed one sentence. "Dr. Tennyson?" "Yes, Gregory." "You're an awesome therapist." He snorted, tired and shaken. "Don't say that yet," he said. "You haven't seen the bill."